Good morning, good afternoon from wherever you are joining in. Thanks for joining Elite CISO's weekly session that we conduct every Thursday, 11 o'clock India time. The topic, as you see on the screen for today's session, is the journey to password-less authentication, right? Password has been a great problem. I mean, it's a problem of the entire industry. How to manage password, how to store password. And when we see the leak happens, a lot of password do get leaked online as well. So to talk about this very important topic, we have Marcus and Naveen joining us from Okta and BeyondID. So Marcus and Naveen, let's do a quick introduction. So Marcus, over to you.
Sure, thanks. So I'm Marcus, I'm based in Singapore. So I'm the partner solution engineers in Okta. So my primary role is to support partners like BeyondID in the Asia region.
Awesome.
Naveen?
Okay. Hey, this is Naveen. I'm representing BeyondID. So I'm a director and I'm also a lead solution architect for the security space for BeyondID.
Amazing, amazing. Thanks a lot, guys. So that's a quick introduction. And then from the agenda perspective, as you know, we do a quick welcome and then we will get to a quiz. I will talk about quiz more in subsequent slides. And then 11:05 to 11:50, we will have BeyondID and Okta session. That's where Marcus and Naveen will talk about their solution and how they solve the industry problem around password management. And then 11:50 to 12 o'clock, we will have Q&A. That's a live Q&A that we will do. But during the session, if you have any question, you can put it on a Q&A tab. And we have Tim and Siva from BeyondID Okta. They will answer the questions during the session as well. And then I will share the password or a secret to download your participation certificate. We will have Wheel of Fortune. And as part of Wheel of Fortune, we have a fitness watch giveaway this time instead of Amazon Alexa that we have been giving in past, because we like fitness. We'll talk more about it. And then we will open registration for next week's session. This session is being recorded right now. We will upload it on our YouTube site, YouTube channel, and slides will go on Elite CISO's website as well. Now, typically, I see that about 90% people join our session every week. For the 10% people who are joining for the very first time, including the panelists as well, the next what we do is stand and attend challenge, right? We talk about this stand and attend challenge in every webinar that we do, and we are doing it from past couple of years now. So what is stand and attend is, if you sit for the entire day, right? Because we are in an IT profession, and that profession is something where you sit in front of your computer for the entire day, right? Now in a lockdown, even more, the travel is gone. So you are just sitting more as compared to before. So if you sit, you get all these problems like foggy brain, strained neck, heart disease and all. Now I show this slide every time and I hate monotony, right? The stuff should not be monotonous. So I try to find videos relevant to the topic of standing a lot or standing up. So next I'm going to play this video for 2 minutes. Let's go through that and understand why standing is important for us. Okay, guys, so playing a quick video now. Hopefully you are able to hear it.
You might have noticed that standing desk has become pretty popular. In fact, a lot of employees, faculty, and staff at Keene State use standing desk. The difference between sitting and standing is actually a energy expenditure of about 50%. But that's not really the best reason why to make the switch from sitting to standing. When you stand, your body has to use core muscles to stabilize, and tiny muscle contractions are happening all the time. What we think is the benefit is that those little muscle contractions are drawing down sugar from your bloodstream so that your body is more effectively using the fuel that you give it, and we don't have to use as much insulin to put sugar away and store it for later. So people's risk of diabetes and cardiovascular disease actually can go down when they make switches like standing instead of sitting. So one of the actual physical changes that can happen because people make the switch from sitting to standing is a decrease in what's called your waist circumference, which is the size right around your middle. This is a place where abdominal fat can be stored, and the deeper that abdominal fat is, the more dangerous it can be, because the closer it gets to your pancreas, the more it's going to interfere with your ability to make insulin. So type 2 diabetes is much more associated with waist circumference. I did a study several years ago where I asked participants not necessarily to exercise, but to just try to get up and move around more. And while none of them necessarily increased the number of steps they took in the day, they did have a significant decrease in their waist circumference. This was a group of women who were already overweight, so that decrease was helping to decrease their risk of type 2 diabetes.
Great, guys. So you see what is the benefit of standing up? I mean, apart from what we saw in the video, if you stand, you will have less pain in your body, you will feel better, you will think sharper, all these good things, right? So if we are going to stand, I'm going to give this challenge to you all, including the panelists as well. So if you're accepting the challenge, go to your chat window and say yes, that you are accepting this challenge. And I love the energy when people put it that they are accepting the challenge. So that's great. A lot of people are saying yes, you're accepting the challenge. What about Naveen, Siva, and Marcus? Are you guys accepting this challenge as well?
Yes, man.
Awesome. Siva is standing. Marcus is also standing. I'm also standing. I'm also taking this challenge. Awesome. That's great, guys. Okay, now since you're standing and you are thinking sharp, let's get to the quiz. Okay. Next, what is going to come is quiz. Now the quiz is fastest finger first. Okay, it's a 30-second quiz. I will show the question and then you have to type the answer as early as possible. The first person to answer the question right will get 1,000 rupees Amazon voucher. Okay, guys, if you don't even know the answer, do a Google and quickly paste it here. Here comes the first question. 176 people online right now. Let's see what the first question is. The first question is, what is the maximum length of password in Azure Active Directory? Okay, I see a lot of people typing answers. I will go through the answers, and at the end we will announce the winner. I already see right answer coming in. 256 is the right answer. So for the Azure Active Directory, the maximum length of password you can have is 256 character. I'm not sure if anybody is crazy enough to keep a 256 character password, but you never know. Okay. Okay, here comes the next question. You have to be very specific for this one. Okay. OAuth, open authorization, is used for authentication or authorization. So you have to type the answer, authentication or authorization. Okay. Either authentication is the answer or the authorization. I see a lot of people are answering. A lot of people are saying authentication. Some are saying authorization because those are the only two options. So we will see who the first one to answer it. So the correct answer is the OAuth is used for authorization, not authentication. SAML is used for authentication and OAuth is used for authorization. So these were the quick two questions we wanted to have. 181 people, very nice. With this, over to you, Marcus. So let me stop sharing and let's start with the session.
All right. So I will go ahead and share my slide first. Can I confirm you guys can see my screen?
Yep, you can see it.
That's good. All right. So once again, very good morning, everyone. I'm Marcus, and this whole standing up challenge have really give me more energetics to go through. Right? It's been a long day for me. Right. So today I'm here to share a little bit more on the passwordless. What is exactly passwordless about? How are we going to move towards passwordless? What are the benefits that we can get from this passwordless, right? So here we are, as we already know, right? Today's challenges, you have seen for the past 3 years, there are numbers of breaches that happen. 80% of the breaches, according to Verizon Data Breach Report, they are all related to credential loss, right? And especially at this point of time where organizations are moving to the cloud, these challenges have become more common, right? Because the lack of security, the lack of knowledge of how to secure data in the cloud have caused all these challenges, right? And therefore, password is no longer good enough. And I believe most of you guys have heard of the two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication to further enhance the security on top of the predominantly password authentications. So this is a very interesting chart that I want you guys to focus on, right? So first of all, on the left-hand side, you guys understand this. The more security you implement, the more frictions your user will face, right? It's always this balance that we need to juggle around when it comes to security. So on the left-hand side, you can see with the password authentication, some things that everyone are very familiar with. You go into any applications, any portals, banking, or whatever services that you are using online, predominantly is a password authentication, right? So everyone are very comfortable with that. But again, like I mentioned earlier on the previous slide, 80% of the breaches involve a credential loss, right? So we have to find a new way to authenticate the users, and with the new way of working with these pandemics going on. So that's when people start to move into the second stage where you see the password plus the multi-factor authentication, the second factor authentication, right? So as you can see, where we implement this additional layer of security, the user experience drop. It makes sense, right? Now that not only the credential, you have to provide another factor of authentication. And many of time, it depends on what factors of authentication. If it's Okta verified, probably not so much of hassle, you just bring up your phone, acknowledge you are the one that do the authentication. But if you are in the likes of SMS, email, or YubiKey or hardware tokens, that's when users have to carry another tokens as and when they need to do authentication, they have to bring in another devices, right? So the user experience actually will drop when it comes to implementing a multi-factor authentications. So that's the beauty of passwordless. So I believe most of you guys are familiar with the new way of authentication. You bring up your iPhone, you bring up your Samsung. If you are using a MacBook, you have the you got the fingerprint biometrics authentications, Windows Hello. So all this new technology have provide the user a better user experience. At the same time, it also enhance our security, right? Because biometrics stays in the devices. The bad actor have to get hold of your devices before they can make any malicious act, right? So this is kind of like how we see the password journey, where we are moving into passwordless authentications, how user benefit in terms of user experience, at the same time, how security is being enhanced with device level authentications. So what's the ideal experience when it comes to authentication, right? There's a lot of things that we want to take into consideration. First of all, user experience. You want to make sure the controls that you have implement is easy for your users to adopt, right? You don't want them to go around your security measure. That's when the security measures fail, right? So we want to make sure we give them the best user experience so they are comfortable with the security controls that we have implemented. And then looking at the administrator experience, we also want to make sure your administrator have a single pane of glass, easy way to manage all these different security control. We don't want them to have different consoles, have different ways to do the configurations. That will give your administrator a lot of stress, and many of the time they will make human mistake, right? So that's something that we want to avoid as well. And let me just move the screen aside. I can't see my own screen. All right. Okay, and then we want to make sure the solutions that we adopt are scalable, right? When it comes to passwordless authentications, a lot of common feedback is, if you are doing biometrics authentications, what about my users that are still using mobile devices that do not come with a biometrics or facial recognitions, right? So you want to make sure whatever solutions that you adopt to move towards the passwordless, it can scale across your employees and the people that you want to protect. And then on the bottom half, you can see we want to make sure the solutions that you are deploying ensure the security that is it must be proper implementations. It shouldn't be vulnerable to the middle of attack. So make sure the solutions that we adopt must be secure, right? And of course, a very common concern from a lot of organizations is, hey Marcus, is this passwordless thing gonna cost my arm and leg, right? Is it going to be very expensive? So we want to also make sure the cost effectiveness of these solutions. So there's a lot of misunderstanding when it comes to passwordless, right? So far, all my conversation with my prospect partner, they have very different understanding of passwordless. Just last Friday, I called up with one of the SI, very big SI in Singapore. Their mindset of passwordless is just certifications, right? And that's not the case, right? So let's unpack a little bit on this passwordless. Right, so you can see here, this is a very interesting chart. On the right-hand side, you can see we color code the different type of attack. So the automate bot, phishing attack, or the advanced persistent threat, right? So if you put this into perspective in the different authentication mechanism, you can actually see security key, which is like passwordless authentication using security key, right? They are 100% effective against all type of attack, right? Because fundamentally, it requires things that the user have, and we eliminate the password fatigue challenges that users are facing today, right? That's the beauty of moving towards passwordless. And then the next question is that a lot of CFO that actually question me is, oh, this sounds too good, right? I mean, how much going to cost us? Is it going to be very expensive? You know, deploying passwordless across my employees sounds very expensive project, right? So if you look at this, right, using Okta, there's a very easy way to implement passwordless across your employee, right? And the beauty is you actually cut down the number of support tickets about users forgetting password, users resetting password, and that offloads a lot of the support incidents that you are getting per month, right? And then if you look at the top of the chart, this is where the users start to be more optimized, more effective, right? They no longer need to remember passwords. They need to, you know, refer to their post-tick sticker for certain credential, especially for IP administrator, right? I believe most of you guys are with me on this, right? You want to access the cloud EC2, GCP, and then we have different private keys that we need to find, locate them, and then do the SSH. So those are all the challenges that are pushing us back from effective working for day to day. So when it comes to passwordless authentications, there are a few things that you want to take into considerations before you make the move into passwordless, right? So first of all, the adoption, right? As I mentioned, your user experience is key, but you want to make sure the passwordless solutions that you are pushing out, it cover across your employee, right? You can't assume everyone have a devices that are biometrics enabled, right? We need to take into considerations that users that do not have a devices or users. So we must have different form of ways to address these different employees with different devices. And then if you look at the middle, we want to also look at the cost, right? Are you going to deploy MDM solutions? How are you going to make sure everyone can use this passwordless journey, which I will share a little bit more in a while. And then lastly, implementations. How are we going to roll out the passwordless to all your employees or even your customers? So the interesting part about Okta is there's more than one way to implement passwordless. And the whole reason of having these different options is to cover the different variety, different categories of users. So these are the 4 different types. You can see I will go through one by one. So first of all, if you are an existing Okta user or you are using Okta in your organizations, you already can use our factor sequencing to deliver a passwordless login experience. So if you can see on the right-hand side, right, this is basically the screenshot of our configuration page. It's pretty straightforward. We will define a condition. Let's say if the user is in a specific region, right? It can be the office IP address. It can be a geolocation like Singapore, and the user behavior is, is normal. I mean, they are not behaving abnormally. And then we continue the authentication. So the bottom part, the authentication, is where we define the factor sequencing. And factor sequencing is basically using whatever multi-factor authentication options that you have enabled in Okta. So you can tell Okta if the user fall under this condition, let's just authenticate the user using Okta Verify. So in the user experience perspective, all we need to do is use the mobile devices. Say I'm the one that's trying to log into these applications, and then Okta will bring you straight into the application without putting in the password. So that's the beauty of factor sequencing. And of course, with the name factor sequencing, you can have more than one multi-factor configured here. So you can say Okta verify followed by a SMS OTP. Those are all possible, right? So that's first things that you can work on in terms of passwordless. And then let's take a look at the next one, which is the email link. So let's say your users, right, they do not have a Okta verified installed on their devices, right? Or they are contractors, right? You can't dictate them to use the Okta verified. This is where email links come in, right? You can use email link. So if you guys have used Slack before, it's pretty similar. So when you try to log in, it will send you a magic link in your email. And then you click on the email itself, it will log you into the destination applications, right? Again, no password. It's very secure because only the user have access to the email mailbox. This is another ways that Okta can do passwordless authentications. The next one, web authent. So I believe you guys are also familiar or maybe somehow have used this before. So just imagine Okta verified, right? So you install on your mobile devices, you can use your Apple iOS biometrics to authenticate you. So again, no password, very seamless. You do not need to remember your password anymore, right? So these are the different Touch ID, Face ID that Okta support. On top of that, external authenticators like YubiKey is also supported in Okta. And then the last one, which is the most exciting one, which is our Okta FastPass. So Okta FastPass is coming to release coming soon, right? It's also dependent on our new release of the Okta Identity Engine. Is a new improvement into Okta. So what is Okta FastPass? It's basically a way to implement passwordless across different platforms. It can be Android, iOS, your Windows, Mac OS, doesn't matter to us, right? So we use Okta verified to do the passwordless authentications, and the user experience is seamless, right? So these are the different options that you can go with when it comes to Okta passwordless authentications. And of course, the next things that the common questions that I get is, do you have any use cases, right? Do you have any case study that we can refer to? It sounds so amazing. Can we do some reference cases and see how people actually push down these passwordless across the whole organization? So the interesting part is we are so confident about these solutions that we rolled out passwordless within Okta to all our employees globally, right? So I am also a benefit of this user experience, right? So today, when I start to work, I no longer need to key in my credential, 256 characters, right? So all I need to do is go to Okta FastPass, and then it will authenticate me to my Okta dashboard, and then I have access to the different resources I need. This is the user experience I recorded in my mobile devices. So you can see the Face ID, and the next moment I'm in my Okta dashboard, right? Very effective, very fast. No longer need to remember credential and secure, right? And that's how you can adopt passwordless with Okta. Great. So I shall pass the floor to the next speaker.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Marcus, for giving the insight. Okay, let me share my. Marcus, can you stop your screen sharing? Yeah, thank you. Hey guys, welcome all. So I hope today is treating you all well, right? Okay, so myself, Naveen, I'm representing BeyondID, right? So let me give you a brief about BeyondID. BeyondID offers a comprehensive service in information security space, so specialized in managed identity services. BeyondID offers advisory, consulting, implementation, and service management for identity, cybersecurity, and cloud services. So that's about BeyondID. So we provide a first-class service in an information security space. Okay. So the problem statement, right? So here I'm going to reiterate something, whatever Marcus has already mentioned, right? So like we are sharing our experience on a simple and common use cases, right? It's not an very specialized or anything. It's a common use cases we are using day to day, right? And it's evolution, right? So it's not that we started using it and without evolution and nothing makes sense, right? So in this digital era, right, to access and transact digital data, first of all, the end user needs to validate his identity. I want to emphasize here. So the end user needs to validate his identity. So how he is going to validate? So we call it as an authentication process, right? So from decades, like industry is following relying on the password for the authentication process. Okay, but the password itself is a root cause for most of our data breach. So it's around 84% of the data breaches occur due to the password. Okay, we are introduced the password for a security purpose, but by a modern tools, the passwords are getting vulnerable, and it itself it's making the system insecure, right? And it's not only that, right? So managing the password, and whenever the user forget the password, maintaining that is very costly, and it provides a poor user experience. So we know that once the industry started the digital world, so they thought that, okay, for an authentication problem, the password is the solution. But now it has become the password itself is the problematic, okay, for an authentication process. So that's the current challenge we are facing now. See, as the Marcus has already mentioned, whenever we are doing an authentication process, and this is the first step any end user would be going through whenever he has accessing the digital platform, right? Without authentication, he would be not allowed to access his data. So this is the most important thing, okay? The business team and an IT security team as a challenge, okay? The business team tells that for my end user, give the convenience, don't irritate them, or don't make their life horrible. But the IT team says that no, the security is important. So if you sacrifice the data, then it's not good, right? So it is always a challenge, providing an convenience to the end user, and also making sure that the security posture of the organization is good. So it is always a challenge. So you need to be stressing on these two things. This is very, very important. Convenience as well as security. Both should go hand in hand. We cannot sacrifice one on the other. So we need to carry this hand in hand. Okay. See, as I told, you need to, as an end user, you need to validate its identity. So that is through authentication process. In an from the decade, it has been evolved, right? So first, the workflow we used is the password only authentication process. And the second workflow which has been used is password plus second factor. So we tell multi-factor, means it's basically a two-factor. It's not that you provide a password. After providing a password, you authenticate with some other means. So that is called a second factor, or we can call it as an multi-factor authentication. And then it is comes to an passwordless. Okay, so these are all the three broader category where the authentication process has been adopted. Okay, so let's give some deep dive into the password, right? Everyone knows, I'm not making new things, so everyone knows, right? So yeah, the password, the definition of the password from the security is what you know, what the end user know. What I know is the definition of password, because you know it, you remember it to prove your identity. So that's the definition. So always remember this, what you know is something, password, security question, those are all the things which is called what you know. So that is the definition. But once it's delivered to the end user, right? So let's see how they would change this definition for their own convenience, right? So if I am an end user, oh, this is a password, so I need to remember it. Okay, so I will use some dictionary word or easy to remember password. Okay, which is vulnerable now. Like people are, it is easily hacked and by using the dictionary attacks. Okay, then let's say the system has evolved. Okay, I will make sure that my end user doesn't choose this dictionary word. I will make him pay for it. So let him use the complex password. So it tells that, okay, use a caps letter, use a small letter, use one special character and other things. Okay, so then the end user thinks that, okay, it's very complex. Okay, he sets that password, but what he does is he will store that plain text. Since it is very hard to remember, he stores that plain text is in a local drive. Okay, again, that is vulnerable if someone get hold of that plain text in that local, because on the local drive we don't have any control, right? So that is very vulnerable. If you think that making the password complex will solve the problem, no, it may make you secure, but for the end user convenience, the end user would give his own definition for it. Okay, then as I told, right, this is an digital era, and we are going to use many digital platforms. It's not only one, right? So for example, if I remember today, I would be using, I've already used 20 different applications, right? So I used some of my DMAT account for share. I used corporate, and I used my Gmail. So many things. So we are going to use n number of digital platform. When there is an n number of digital platform, and each digital platform will have their own authentication. Okay, that means if you are using 100 different digital platform, okay, then you need to remember 100 password. For sure, I'm not that awesome so that I can remember all the different passwords. So what I would do is I would reuse the same password. Okay, for an platform one, I would use one password, and I don't want to be creative, and I don't want to get to my problem myself. So I will use the same password across the platform. Let's assume one of that platform is weak. Okay, and if we sacrifice that password in that one platform, it doesn't mean that only that platform is vulnerable. Now, since an end user for his convenience, he has used the same password, all the platform is vulnerable. Okay, see, you would have been seen in Gmail, right? If you have logged into your Gmail, so you would be getting a mail. It looks like your password is being sacrificed in some other website. So please make sure that you change it, right? See, that's the way, like how as much as a white hat people are trying to secure the system, there are many people, the hackers, right? So they are evolving also and how to break it. Okay. Then and the password is, it can be a prey for the shoulder surfing, right? See, you have many friends. When you are typing something, you have friends around. You don't look at it or anything, right? So it's a prey for shoulder surfing and a couple of things. So this password is neither solving the convenience nor in security here. It is very weak in security, as well as it is not providing a full convenience to the end user. So that's where the problem is, right? Okay, then to evaluate, right? So there is another workflow the industry has adopted, password plus MFA. So what it means is that, okay, now just providing a password is not enough. Now you need to provide another type of second factor authentication. So I've seen some of the website users, both uses what I know, right? One is the password and the another one is the security question. So here you are using the same kind of approach, what I know. Okay, so that is not an secure. And here it is impact the productivity of the end user, right? Now we are asking the end user to give two authentication, password plus MFA. Okay, this is, to be frank, I would personally recommend that the password plus MFA is really good for an corporate world where they have implemented SSO, right? So single sign-on. If they have implemented a single sign-on and with a password plus MFA, that's really good, because the end user needs to authenticate once he has authenticate, whenever he is accessing the another application through an SSO through Okta platform, so they can easily access. So there would be not much hassle to go over multiple authentication. In a confined to a corporate world, yes, this works absolutely fine, the password plus MFA, but don't forget, you should have the SSO implemented with a strong platform like Okta, right? So in that case, it really a good thing, right? So to have this workflow, password plus MFA. But if you consider a SAHAM world, as I told, right? So I would be using 20 different digital platform, and they don't glue together because they run in their own zone, right? So they don't know each other and they don't trust each other. In that case, having this is you are taking away the end user convenience. That means you are going to lose your end customer. Okay, if you make difficulty to the end user to access his data, he tries to leave you, right? So our focus, the business focus, is to retain our existing user and attract new business user. Okay, so that's where we are moving to this passwordless. So for example, today or a couple of days back, right? So I myself, I was amazed. So I didn't log in for my HDFC Life for very long. Okay, I just opened the HDFC Life, and the first thing I thought that, I don't remember this password. What the hell I'm going to do, right? But I was immediately, when I see that website and I saw that, okay, there is an option that you can log in with dynamic one-time OTP, which will be send it to my mobile. I was awesome. Oh, I don't need to remember my password, right? So I just provided my mobile number and I just click send one-time OTP to my mobile number. See here, this one-time OTP is dynamic. So that's the key. The dynamic is the key. It's not static. The password is static, but the passwordless, whatever the techniques we use, the factors we use, if it is dynamic enough, So that's where it would add value. If that, even in the passwordless, if it's some, we are using some static value, then it really doesn't make any sense, right? The dynamic in nature, that's what it would help. Then I was able to log in without any hassle. So for sure, as an end user, I was really happy to use that website. It doesn't, the data what I am accessing is nothing to do with the authentication, but my journey started with authentication. Okay. If the start of the journey is good, then everything is good, right? So that's what the experience we need to provide it to the end user. So especially in the SIAM world case, this passwordless with a dynamic in nature, that's play a major role. Okay, so again, I wanted to stress, take this two key words, right? Convenience, that's nothing but improvise the end user experience. Then the second thing is improve your security posture of your organization, right? Both are very important. Okay. Okay, so this is a small a graph to show that, right? So we have discussed that, right? Like, see, the password is not an convenient, nor it is a good in security. And the password plus MFA is like, yeah, it's high in security, but it causes the inconvenient. As I told, for a corporate, if you're a single kind and if you have implemented an SSO with a strong platform with Okta, yes, this is good. But in the SIAM world and other things, so like the passwordless authentication, which provides both user convenience and with an high security, right? So remember this 3 workflow: passwords, password plus MFA, passwordless authentication. So that's the evolution journey that we are going. Okay. No, we have spoke about, okay, so we need to have a second factor, right? What is that second factor would be, right? So it can be another, as I told, the security questions can be another factor, right? It is just that instead of validating once, you are validating your identity twice. But the nature of them is both are what you know, what the end user would be knowing, that is the nature of it. As I told, what end user knows, it's always vulnerable because he comes up with his own idea of using it, right? So as we mentioned, so the couple of other second factors that we commonly use is that SMS, voice call, email. For sure, I can 100% sure that everyone would have been used this SMS, voice, and email for any banking and other things. So for any financial transaction, it would send an OTP, and that's and it has been validated against the validate against. And the next is the software OTP. So like Okta, Verify, Google has it, and the Microsoft has it, right? The software OTP, the OTP would be generated in the mobile, and that you need to enter that OTP, and that would be authenticated. Then the physical hardware OTPs, push verification, like Okta push verify, and YubiKey OTP, and you do have universal second factor and the web authn and the Windows allow, right? So those are all the different factors, right? Even like it doesn't mean that when you adopt a second factor or a second factor or an foreign passwordless, you choose one of this factor, right? So user doesn't remember, we will choose one of this line item, except the first two, password and security question. Let them log in from SMS, YubiKey OTP, or UTF and web authn. That's fine. But again, in that, if you just deep dive little bit, you need to consider different things. One is the security, usability, and how much, this is two important thing, right? Phishing resistance, how much it is resistance to the new world hackers. So they are coming up with their own process. As much as we try to protect, there are people who are there to break it. And don't think that they are not funded. They are funded heavily to break us, right? So we need to see which of this factor is phishing resistance and also MITM resistance. So man in the middle attack resistance, right? Okay. See, you can see the SMS and voice and email. So it is vulnerable for an attacks. So that's where it has been in the red. And even the physical OTP, so it is the same thing. The push verification is a kind of better, but it is still vulnerable to the man in the middle attack. Okay. Now, for a very secure, especially in a very secure secure organization where the sensitive data needs to be protected, you do have FIDO and the web protocol which is widely used for protecting a sensitive data, because this authentication does on a private key is owned by the end customer, which he has. Okay, it is nothing to remember or anything. It's some private key which the end user would be carrying. Through the private key, there would be a security key would be hashed and send it to the server to validate. So hacking the private key and public key is near to impossible, right? So that's where this U2F, FIDO, and the web authn. So Windows Hello also follows that FIDO protocol, the U2F, and like the YubiKey is the major, I would say, the major player in this the thing, and Okta goes very well supported with YubiKey and Windows Hello, and even you can use your mobile has an Bluetooth connectivity for the FIDO, where your mobile will be storing the private key for the authentication, right? So it's something which is stored in your hardware very securely. Okay. So then, so we have discussed a lot of things, and maybe we have already to some point, we already know that what is the benefit we are going to get in the passwordless opportunities, right? So for example, if you are not using the passwords, for sure, there is no question of password is stolen or compromised, right? So that's good. And they improve the productivity. So as I told, if the user's journey starts well through the authentication process, then he will feel happy, and he needs to do an authentication only once, and his productivity would increase and align with the future, right? No, who doesn't want to grow with the future? Okay, so the changing world, like protecting your sensitive data and other things, so we will be aligned with the future here. Okay. So these are all the, like, I would just say, very the catchy words of the industry, right? So you all know. So I don't want to put more time here. So by now, I think I should be able to convincing that using the password less would strengthen the securities, reduce the cost, as already Marcus has emphasized there, reduce the cost, and supports productivity and enhanced user experience is the same thing. So at the end of the day, I would say that the end user is happy and your business is growing. What else you need, right? So that's the goal of all the leadership, right? So that is what we need to say. Okay. The one thing which I not mentioned is how ease to deployable, right? So whenever you choose a factor, you need to see that, okay, how much it's easy to deploy and how much it's easy to deliver it to the end customer. So that's the another pointer which we need to take care. Okay, then when you come to this use cases and industry, right? Everyone knows authentication is agnostic to industry, right? Are we saying that, okay, authentication is not required for financial service and it's required for healthcare? Nothing like that, right? It's agnostic to industry. Authentication is must need for all the industry. I have not made, we have not mentioned so many of this industry. All the digital platform should go through this authentication. And Okta is doing very well, and we are working with Okta to make our customer really happy to adopt kind of industry, to adopt Okta and provide a great service for them. So I would say that any password or an authentication process is an industry agnostic, so it is used across. So, and it has a lot of potential. So that's where this is an hot cake, right? So having an security is knowing about the security is an hot cake in the industry now. Yep. So that's it from my side. Thank you.
Great,
for
perfect
taking time and listening.
Let's open for Q&A. I see 3 people have raised their hand. So guys, if you want to ask live question, go ahead and raise your hand. I'm going to unmute Anup, Rajan, and Rishma. So Anupji, please go ahead, ask your question. And you have to be quick enough. Rajan bhai, go ahead, ask your question.
Hi, thanks for the lovely session. What I understand is still based on the 3 fundamentals: what you know, what you have, and what you are. But the issue that we are facing in security paradigm is what you are is also compromised. What if what you are gets compromised? It's very hard to replicate. It's very hard to remediate. So how does Okta plug that gap?
Yep. See, when you say what you are, so we are talking about the face recognition or in biometric, the finger point, right? Right. So that's where the FIDO, right? See, as I told, when we are choosing the factor, we need to choose the factor based on the population. So what is the population we are addressing? Okay. So if it is a very end user, so we need to take what is the population we are addressing, what is the sensitiveness of the data. Okay, so if the biometric, as I know, right, for sure, the biometric, what you are is also compromised, right? And we have seen in a lot of movie where they capture the biometric and they do it, right? In this case, that's where the FIDO and universal two-factor and web authent came into the picture, right? So where I mentioned where the private key would be stored in a device like YubiKey, and even you can use your mobile and other things. So in that area, there is a lot of investment is being done. If your data is very sensitive and you don't want to compromise anything, so Okta is very well supporting the U2F and the FIDO protocol. So that's the way to go. I hope I answered your question.
Hi, Naveen. Can you hear?
I can hear you.
Okay, so what I wanted to find out is like, see, I have raised one of the questions where we have multiple applications. This is, especially industry related.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I bring, I can't bring all the applications to one platform because there are some, some hybrid environments also involved in this. So in those cases, how do I use effectively this solution?
Okay, see, it's a good question, right? So there are 2 things which we can do there, right? First is, given that application can be modernized, right? When I say modernized, make your application to support a standard protocol like SAML or an OIDC. So there was a question, right? Whether Auth is used for an authorization and or an authentication. So the next version of Auth is OIDC, which is used for the authentication. So we need to see is there is an opportunity for us to modernize that application to support that standard SSO. Okay, if it is can be modernized, then it's very simple, right? Modernizing, we have a lot of library. Okta provides a lot of library to make your application modernized to support SAML or OIDC. It's a matter of 1 or 2 days to enhance it. And if you do that, then your application should not be worried about authentication. Now your application started trusting the Okta. Okta would handle that authentication, the passwordless and the second factor, and your application is just trusting the Okta, so that you can focus on the green, focus on what is the functionality needs to be done from your application. All the authentication and everything will be taken care by the Okta platform. So that's the one way of doing it. So modernize your application, right? The second way is, right, your application is very legacy and it uses very old version, but it is serving its purpose. I don't want to change, right? Then we need to have bring in interceptor, right? Before it hit your legacy application, we have an Okta access gateway. All the authentication will be done through the access gateway, and the access gateway is so much evolved so that it can give what is your legacy system. If it is an header-based authentication, if your legacy system, so it would consume the authentication protocol, the standard protocol SAML or OIDC from the Okta, and it would convert that into an header-based and give it to your legacy application, so that your application is focused on providing an what it does best. Your application should not be worried about how I need to do an authentication. That's the problem which needs to be solved by the identity provider, and Okta does an awesome job there. I hope I answered your question there.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, yes. But we'll have to look at the feasibility. Thanks for the heads up, I mean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Rishma, please go ahead, ask your question. Short question and short answer, please. We have 1 more minute to go.
Okay, sorry. Okay. See, you told that you need to stand. I am so energetic now, I cannot stop.
Very nice, very nice.
Sorry about that. Right.
So Manoj, go ahead, ask your question, please.
Best practice, we should change password every 30 to 45 days. So in that scenario, how this passwordless can help us?
Sorry, can you come again? I missed that initial part.
Yeah, I get the question. So yeah, so the question is a lot of organizations, they have the password policy, right? So specific period of time, password rotation is necessary. So how does passwordless help in this sense, right? So as I answer some of the question in the Q&A, the predominantly drive or changing password periodically is because password is a single point of failure, right? So every time you change, it minimizes your risk, right? But with multi-factor authentication, passwordless, you can determine users have to authenticate with Face ID plus biometrics, Face ID with device being trust. With this option, multiple options, your password no longer become a single point of failure, right? This is where my customers get comfortable to say that, okay, we can refine the password policy, give it a 3 months duration before the rotations, right? Because your password is no longer a single point of failure. I hope that will answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Last question, Mr. Surendra Sharma, please go ahead, ask your question.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Pretty informative session. I'll quickly ask 2 small questions just to get your feedback on it. Basically, when you mention FastPass, does it have a external device, something like YubiKey, And on that, what is the mechanism or what is the technical mechanism of authentication? Is it based on some sort of challenge response mechanism? That is one. And the second thing is already asked in part regarding the compliance related issues, like many places you require to rotate the password, change the password. That is already, I think, partly answered. So you could just highlight on the technical aspect of mechanism of authentication.
Okay. So in terms of passwordless, it's still leverage on certifications, right? The mechanism is still certification. So what happened is with FastPass, we are rolling out Okta Verified. Not sure where you guys are familiar with that. So it's a Okta homegrown TOTP software where support most of the iOS, Android, and all the different platforms, right? So the mechanism is still certification, but the beauty of FastPass is it support a full range of different platforms. It can be a Windows, Android, doesn't matter to us, right? So that's how we do the authentications.
Great, sounds good, sounds good. So we are over time, 2 minutes. Let me quickly close this. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, Naveen. Great session. Really enjoyed that. A lot of interesting questions in our Q&A as well. So guys, if you want your participation certificate, which looks like this, you know what to do, as we have been attending our session, but for the newcomers, I'll share one more time. So go to Elite CISO's website, click on events, click on upcoming events, and you will see, you will come to this page, click on CPE certificate, and this will take you to another page. Put your email address over here, put your full name, and the password or secret to download the participation certificate is BUG bug. And you know why bug? Because today, 9th September 1947, first instance of actual computer bug was found. Very interesting day. It was a grasshopper, a hopper that was found in a computer. So that's what went in the history. So that's why the password today is bug. So if you put this, you will get a certificate, something like this. Okay, guys. Now, once you're on website for downloading your certificate, what you can do is, as you know, every week we conduct these sessions on Thursday, 11 o'clock. So next week we have a session with Blanco and a very interesting panel. Our very own Anuprita and Alok is there on the panel. So go ahead, register for this session. We will talk about how Blanco can help reduce data bloat, security risk, and violation of vulnerability, right? So those kind of topics will be covered during the session. And as you know, first 100 to register will be part of a raffle where we give away a smart watch this time, right? So today also we are doing a smart watch giveaway, and next week also there will be a smart watch itself. Okay, guys, so go ahead and register for that. Now, the wheel of fortune for this session. So as I said, first 100 to register for the sessions, we put them in this wheel of fortune. So all the people who registered are part of this wheel now. I'm going to spin it. If your name comes, go to the chat and say, yes, you are there. And then we will give away this smartwatch. Okay, guys, good luck. I'm going to spin it now. Let's see. Great. Okay, awesome. Very nice. Karandeep, very, very active, very fit individual, member of our fitness community. We get a lot of inspiration from Chief. Karan sir, are you there? I'm sure you are there. Awesome, awesome, amazing. I'm not sure if a smartwatch will be a good investment for you because you already are on Garmin and all. You have fancy watches. So, but again, congratulations. We will sync offline. If you want something else, we can do that as well. With that, thank you everyone for joining in. We are 5 minutes late, but our session was very interesting, so I could not interrupt in between. Thank you very much. Thanks Okta team. Thanks BeyondID. Bye for now. See you guys next week.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Hey, thank you guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Have a good long weekend as well.